Welcome back everyone. So today we will discuss about what is a hypothesis and the different types of hypothesis. Before getting down to what exactly is a hypothesis, there are two components that you have to remember about hypothesis testing. The first one is that every hypothesis has experimental variables, that is independent as well as dependent variable. So what exactly is an independent variable? An independent variable is what the researcher changes and wishes to manipulate, whereas a dependent variable is the variable which a researcher measures, that is, understands the effect of the independent variable. The second component of a hypothesis is that it should always be measurable and testable. Let's understand this with a better example as we help Priya. So every good research starts with observation, gathering of data, analyzing data, and then finally drawing a conclusion out of it. Every day after school, Riya would come and play with the fishes in her aquarium. She would often end up feeding them with breadcrumbs, fish food, and also further observing their behavior. She also tries to identify other elements involved in the aquarium. For instance, pebbles, a fish house, fake plants, as well as real seaweeds. Now let's help Riya to identify the experimental variables in this setting. First comes the dependent variable. So in this particular setting, the dependent variable would be the behavior of the fishes. That is the main target observation of Riya. Whereas the independent variable would be the potential things, for instance, breadcrumbs or fish food that might influence the behavior of the fish. Can we help Priya establish a measurable scenario or testable hypothesis based on this particular observation? Let's see what could be the possible hypothesis that we can formulate on the basis of this setting. So the first one could be how the fishes start jumping while they have been giving food in the aquarium. This could be a good hypothesis to test, right? The second one could be how the fishes become really competitive when they have been given food in the aquarium. And the third one could be how all these fishes run to their fish houses while they listen to loud music. Testable, right? So that's what a good hypothesis looks like. A predicted statement at a particular scenario. The fundamental requirement of a hypothesis is that it can be tested against reality and it further can be retained as well as rejected. So what are these? These are the different kinds of hypotheses that further exist in research. So let's understand all of these different kinds of hypotheses by taking an example from Riya's life. So Riya's parents wants her to eat a lot of green vegetables, but she is very skeptical about it. She further tries to explain and understand the advantages of eating green vegetables and as well as the disadvantages of it by further explaining it through different kinds of hypotheses. Now let's discuss all of them in great detail. So the first type of hypothesis that we will discuss today is simple hypothesis. So what does it mean? Simple hypothesis refers to the relationship between one dependent variable and one independent variable. For instance, Riya's parents told her that eating more green vegetables would also lead to losing weight faster. Hence, in this particular scenario, eating more vegetables would be an independent variable rather than her weight would be a dependent variable. The second kind of hypothesis is complex hypothesis. It refers to the relationship between two or more dependent variables and two or more independent variables. Let's continue with Riya's example. So her parents are still after her to have a lot of green vegetables and they further tell her that green vegetables would lead to weight loss, glowing skin, as well as reduction in the risk of diseases like heart attack. The third type of hypothesis is directional hypothesis. A directional hypothesis shows positive or negative change in the relationship between two variables of a population. For instance, let's see and understand this with an example. So, children over here eating chocolates for a period of 2 years straight would have some effect on their teeth, that is, they must have some cavities or their teeth would rot as well. So this is an example of directional hypothesis. Another kind of hypothesis is non-directional hypothesis. Non-directional hypothesis refers to understanding or analyzing the difference between two different experimental groups without mentioning the specification of the difference or change. For instance, a researcher wants to study the ability on memory task of college students as well as elementary school students without mentioning and predicting which a particular population or sample group would perform better. Let's discuss now one of the most important hypotheses that further exists in a research study, known as null hypothesis. A null hypothesis is a statement which a researcher wants to disprove. It refers to having no relationship between independent and dependent variable. The symbol of null hypothesis is HO. Now let's get back to Ria's example. So while presenting her case in front of her parents, Ria came up with this null hypothesis of how eating a lot of green vegetables would not lead to any weight loss. The next kind of hypothesis is alternative hypothesis. This is a hypothesis which a researcher wants to approve or retain. It refers to having a relationship between independent and dependent variable. For instance, let's go back to Ria's example. So the alternative hypothesis in Ria's case would be that there is a positive relationship between eating a lot of green vegetables and reducing your weight. One of the arguments which Ria's parents would definitely wish to prove to her. Now we'll discuss the last hypothesis, that is associative hypothesis. Associative hypothesis refers to when there is a change in one particular variable that would also result a change in the other variable. For instance, Ria's parents stated that eating a lot of green vegetables would lead to having glowing skin. Hence, they developed an entire plan where Ria can try this hypothesis out by eating a lot of green vegetables for 1 month and then see the changes on her skin. So, let's summarize what all we discussed today in the video. We discussed about what is a hypothesis and what are the different components involved in hypothesis, that is independent and dependent variable. And the second one would be that hypothesis should always be measurable and testable. We also discussed different hypotheses ranging from simple hypothesis to associative hypothesis. Now, here's a small quiz for all of you to take about what we discussed in the video today. In the next video, we will be talking about the different kinds of referencing techniques, how we actually reference in a research paper. See you all in the next video.